Price is king, it's where we belong. Stay with the dream, don't lose your way. Right way's the fire that'll light the day. Keep it simple, let the moment arrive. 3-8 trap keeps the hope alive. Hold on tight till the signal's near. Right way's the trail, we're breaking through fear.
Good morning, friends and fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for September 15th, 2025. Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, got some nice rest, ready for another busy week in the market. Let's first start off with talking just a little bit about what happened overnight. We had Asian markets last night, kind of mixed. We saw China miss on some data showing that their economy is still weakening over there. But we had Australia down $11.90 or 0.13%. Hong Kong moved up by 58.40 or 0.22%. South Korea, 10 straight days of gains and new record highs, up 11.77 or 0.35%. The Nikkei rose by 395.62 or 0.89%. India fell by 44.80 or 0.18%, and Shanghai down by $10.09 or 0.26%. If we take a look at European markets this morning, European markets, however, are bullish across the board. We have the DAX right now coming in up 82.57.35%. The FTSE is only up $1.27 at 0.01%, and the CAC is up 84.55 or 1.08% this morning, so feeling pretty bullish over there. If we take a look at U.S. futures, we are bullish across the board here as well, trying to push on higher Monday morning. We've got the Dow futures at this moment up 81 points even. S&P 500 futures are up 11 points even, and the NASDAQ futures up $19.75 so far this morning. Let's take a look at what we've got going on in those bonds here this morning. Bond prices showing just a little bit of maybe uncertainty here today. If we take a look at the 2-year bonds coming in at 3.55%, they moved a little bit up on Friday, still kind of hanging in there. The 10-year bonds at 4.05%. and 30-year bonds at 4.65% here this morning. So we'll want to be keeping an eye on those. Now, unfortunately, if we take a look at the U.S. dollar is showing just a little bit of weakness here this morning, down almost 16 cents, and you can see we're very, very close to breaking some price support here in the chart on the dollar. So we'll want to be keeping an eye on that. Bond weakness is still adding some uncertainty here in that US dollar, and we could continue this very modest or very shallow downtrend here in the dollar. So watch that carefully. Now, if we take a look at what that means for our precious metals here this morning, our precious metals, well, we've got, interestingly enough, gold, even with the weakening dollar, down just a little bit so far this morning. Right now, gold futures are coming in, let's see, down $5.30 here this morning on the futures. Still holding in a bullish pattern here. You could see that as a bull flag up here. So watch that carefully here in gold. And if we take a look at silver, my goodness, silver has a very strong and bullish pattern in here. I really need to adjust my trend to look something more like that. As we take a look here, silver futures this morning, however, down just 15 cents. 42.68 an ounce this morning. Copper, if we look at COPX here on the miners, just zooming and continuing to zoom to the upside, with copper up this morning just a bit over a penny here this morning, continuing to push on up. However, platinum is moving down just slightly this morning, down by $2.90 an ounce, and palladium is falling by $18.20 an ounce after a zooming move there on Friday. Still in a very, very bullish pattern. If we take a look at how that is affecting cryptos here this morning, well, we've got Bitcoin moving lower this morning after a zooming move on Friday, down 810.97. That is a 0.70% decline in Bitcoin this morning. Ether is down 95.27 here this morning, or 2.09%. And if we take a look at Solana here, Solana is down this morning $7.50 after a big gap up and move on Friday, pulling back just a little bit, or 3.11% lower, right across the board in those cryptos here this morning. If we take a look at what we've got going on here in oil prices, oil just a little bit higher this morning. Whoops, excuse me. Clicked a button that I shouldn't have. If we take a look at USO this morning, USO pulling back just a tiny little bit, and I'm going to change this trend to look more like this, and you can see we're continuing to make that move down. But you do also want to recognize the fact that we have a little tiny higher low in there, and that possibility that this could be wedging in here on oil. Oil futures at the moment coming in up 12.5 cents, or at 62.82 a barrel here this morning. Brent crude also modestly higher at 67.18 a barrel. And we're taking a look at natural gas here, also just a tiny little bit higher here this morning by about a penny and a half. So we'll want to be keeping an eye on that. Now, we do want to recognize that there were some attacks on some Russian oil facilities, and there is certainly some concern that there could be some supply changes coming out of that. Obviously, with the situation of possible sanctions and things like that coming here against Russia. So we'll have to keep an eye on these oil prices. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Monday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at what we've got going on here in these index charts. And remember, we want to look at these charts for what they are, not for what we want them to be. We want to look at all the details here of the price action without a bias, and we want to focus in directly on what that price action movement could mean for us. Let's take a look. When you look at the diamonds, clearly we're in a very, very bullish pattern here. Resumed that upside trend, making new record highs here last week. Friday, we just rested a little bit after that zooming move on Thursday. and just showing a little bit of a little doji price action in here this morning, trying to move just a little bit higher. But there's no way you can really look at this in a bearish light. So if those bulls can continue to find that inspiration here today, let's look for a stretch up here, see if we can first break that the top of Thursday's candle, and then we'll see if we can stretch on up for new record highs in the market. Blue sky above that in the diamonds. If the bears were to have anything to say, then a pushback into this area right here, we'd catch a little bit of price support. We'd also catch that new little upside trend in here. If we can hold in there, I don't see any problem at all in the diamonds. If we were to start breaking this down a little bit, however, if we were to start coming back into these areas of the chart, that's where I think we might get a little bit of concern in the market. A little bit of worry might start picking up. But I really don't think the diamonds gets bad unless we take out the low of this candle over here. We're going to have a pretty substantial decline before we take out enough support in that chart to really become a problem in the diamonds. If we take a look at this with our moving averages, we'd be back down here coming close to a test of the 50-day moving average, and notice all of this support over here as well. So it's possible if we really got going with the bears, we could push down into there and then bounce right back off, and that would be a good, healthy probably pullback in the market if that were to occur. But there's nothing in this chart right now that suggests we're ready to do that just yet. If we take a look at our SPY, also incredibly bullish here. The SPY just ripping in this trend to the upside. There is nothing in here that says bearishness right now, and it may say a little bit of over exuberance, but it is not saying anything about bearishness. You can see a little bit of a push up here this morning, possibly setting new record high at the open if that continues, and blue sky above in the SPY. If the bears were to have anything to say, then we might start pushing back down through some of these areas here in the chart, reversing in here, just coming back into this trend. We'd have to have a whopper of a day, certainly possible because of our low breadth, but if we were to push all the way back down into here, again, I don't see any problem with that. If we were to get that much of a pullback here, this is just a good area that it could bounce from. I think we'd have to break down below some of these areas here in the chart, which would just be a whopper of a pullback here in the SPY. Right now, that doesn't look like there's any chance of that occurring. One thing I will say that, we're starting to stretch up here and get really stretched away from that 50-day moving average again. So again, maybe a little bit of exuberance in here. There's been a lot of talk of an AI bubble. So keep an eye on that. If we take a look at the QQQ, same thing here. QQQ, extremely bullish. Just absolutely nothing in there that suggests bearishness as we continue to stretch here to the upside. What we do have in here is just that little bit of complication of this high over here. Now, if the bulls can continue to push, then pushing right on through new record highs possibly this morning, as you can see in that bullish push here this morning. Every reason to believe that's possible. But if the bears were to come back and we start pushing back down, this would be a critical area here. Obviously, we would need to progress down through these candles in here. Breaking down below there would probably raise a little bit of concern in the QQQ giving up this high. But as long as this high holds as support, we could push right back into here if the bears had anything to say, bounce right off of that, and then no problem, no harm, no foul in the market. Once again, if we take a look at our moving average, maybe stretching away here just a little bit after that test of the 50-day here, but we'll have to watch that closely. Our IWM continues to be very, very bullish, and if there's any case for the institutions to really keep pushing is to try and get IWM to break through all-time highs here. And you can see we're getting very, very close to that opportunity. If we look at this chart here, really no problem here, trying to move up a little bit today. Break back through Friday's high, and then up through Friday's high, and then we'll be stretching our way up here toward all-time highs in the QQQ, and certainly looks like that's a possibility. If the bears were to have anything to say, pushing back down, I think we're going to have to probably give up this area here in the chart for this to become a major concern here. Popping down through there would raise a little bit of concern in the IWM. That would give up that upside trend and maybe start to give us a little bit of a look of a lower high if that were to occur. But right now there is just nothing in these charts that suggests that's ready to occur at the moment. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today. Our economic calendar, we've got a busy week ahead, but we're starting off really boring today. We've got an Empire State Manufacturing stock or a report in here. They're looking for, consensus is looking for a 4.3. That would be down from the 11.9. So keep an eye on that, showing our manufacturing maybe declining. But what we've seen here the last couple of years, as long as AI is doing good, we don't care anything about what is happening in manufacturing. We've got a 3-month and a 6-month bill auction here, and that's it for the day. If we take a look into Tuesday, we're going to ramp up here a little bit with some market moving reports. Retail sales will be important to pay attention to, those import-export prices, industrial production, business inventories, housing market index, and of course some more bond auctions in here. But the big one is the beginning of the FOMC meeting coming, starting tomorrow. And then we want to remember we've got the FOMC rate decision that will be out here on at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, with the Fed's press conference after that. Of course, it's largely expected that the Fed is going to cut rates. I think the question right now is how much? Is it going to be a 25 basis point bigger like some suggest? We'll have to wait and see, but keep an eye on that. We've got mortgage applications, housing starts and permits ahead of that, Atlanta business, inflation expectations, a petroleum status number, and a bond auction in there. Then if we look into Thursday, normal jobless claims, we've got the Philly Fed, we've got leading indicators, natural gas report, and of course some auctions, Treasury balance sheet, and the Fed balance sheet in here. And then if we look into Friday, remember we've got a quadruple witching here on Friday with lots and lots of options coming to a close, the end of a quarter coming up. So watch that carefully here. Baker Hughes rig count. We often can get quite a bit of volatility around that day, so watch that closely. If we take a look at our earnings calendar here for today, well, not much going on here. We've really only got one major notable here this morning. We've got HAIN that we'll be reporting this morning. Looks like we got a little pop going on in that here today. And that's kind of it for notables. We also have, like HYFT that's reporting, CODA that's reporting, but they're not particularly notable. Trade very low volume here in the market. And this afternoon, there are a couple others in here as well, but the really only major notable is Dave & Buster's will be reporting after the bell today. So very light on those earnings, which you'd expect as we wind down, third quarter reports here. So going to be a pretty pretty light week on that economic calendar to give us much inspiration here in the market. Remember, we do have a couple of other things here, with that FOMC meeting that could provide lots of volatility. And then, of course, there's the news reports and things coming out because we've got another battle setting up in Congress with a budget deadline coming in here at the end of the month. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Remember, if we happen to go to government shutdown, that certainly affects the market. So pay close attention to the news, as that could create some additional pressures here in the market. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube and also click that bell icon when it pops up, so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you could do me that favor, click that thumbs up button, leave a brief comment. That helps the channel to continue to grow. Thank you so much for everyone who does take the time to do that. And hey, I want to remind everyone that today I've got an open house going on. You might want to come over and check us out in the open house. Now, just keep in mind that this might be one of the last that we run an open house this way. If you have an interest, this would be the day to come on over to that open house. We'd love to see you there, and hope that you get something out of it. So have some questions, have some things like that when you come on over. I would love to help you with your trading. So come on over if you do get a chance for that open house today. And I will leave a link for that open house just below the title of the video. Let's take a look at some of the stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, remember, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to do your own due diligence and be very, very careful in this market. Remember, everyone, that anything is possible, and you need to be paying really close attention to the price action of these charts, because the volatility could spike at any time, and largely because of the extremely low breadth that we have here in the market. And we'll take a look at that in just a minute. Let's look at a couple of these in here. First off, we've got American Express here today. We'll want to be watching that closely. American Express in a very, very bullish pattern, and it's one of the few of the credit card companies out there setting up in that bullish pattern. I'd keep a pretty close eye on that if that got a little bit of bullishness going. Let's take a look at KeyCorp in here. KeyCorp is also in a very bullish pattern, as you can see, just resting, and a lot of these big financials continue to hold in very bullish patterns. I would keep an eye on those. Take a look at like Goldman Sachs in here, extremely bullish. I would suggest a little rest or pullback in here could be possible, so watch that carefully here if that does pull back, but very strong there on Goldman Sachs. If we take a look at Baidu, if you like Chinese issue trades, my goodness, Baidu has had quite a run in here straight up. Needs a rest or pullback, but might be something you have an interest in to keep an eye on in those stocks. Mondelez, now Mondelez, I'm just watching this as a maybe. I think this has an equal chance of breaking down into a failure pattern as it does in holding this little basing pattern here and start moving back up. If we do start to see the market begin to pull back, maybe a little bit of worry about the elevation in some of these stocks, then I would watch this carefully for a possibility. There could be some of these old, boring defensive sector stocks that could start picking up. If you take a look at like Clorox made that break of this downtrend trying to hold a higher low in here. Keep an eye on Clorox. If that can come up and break through that 50-day moving average, we have a pattern that we call the round and bottom breakout pattern. That has some upside potential if that can hold in here. So keep an eye on Clorox, might be worth paying attention to in here on some of those defensive type stocks. Now, other places you really should be keeping a little bit of an eye on stocks in the solar sector. First Solar, very, very bullish pattern here. I've placed a price alert on this chart, and you can see that possibility in here, holding on to support and trend. You know, all we need is a little bit of push in here, and I think First Solar could move on through to the upside. If you take a look at ENPH trying to come up out of this bottom, nice break of this downtrend in here. That possibility, a little bit of bullishness could start pushing that right on through to the upside. And I also saw run in here on the solar side of things, really looking bullish. If that can hold in this little resting pattern, look for that next push here to the upside on run. I continue to keep an eye on the miners. My goodness, miners are extremely strong. This little rest here today wouldn't scare me at all as that starts to pull back here toward the trend. I do think we need more of a rest in here soon, but for now, the miners continue to show lots and lots of bullishness. You can look at the junior miners. They continue to be really, really bullish and strong. Watch those. You could take a look at things like Newmont continuing to move up. On the copper side of things, FCX, if that holds this support in here, that might set on up for an upside move. You can even take a look at Alcoa. Alcoa on the aluminum side of things, breaking through resistance here on Friday. Any rest or pullback in here, I would watch for that Alcoa to maybe push on higher here. So keep an eye on some of those miners. Barrick Gold, KGC, I mean, everywhere you go, they're showing lots and lots of strength. Another area of the market that you might want to be keeping a close eye on is in the builders sector of the market. Remember, we've got a possible rate cut coming on Wednesday, and that's going to have positive impacts on all of these builders that have been struggling here a bit getting sales going because of those rates being so high. So watch that carefully in here. If you're looking for some good trades, you might want to look into that builder sector and suppliers of those builders. Nice bullish pattern in here overall, so keep an eye on that. We've got things like Toll Brothers looking very good. Beazer Homes, that's looking good, trying to break through resistance up here. We've got Pulte Homes looking very good. So keep an eye on that builder sector. Home Depot would be another one to be watching. That's continuing to move to the upside, just needs a little bit of rest maybe for a potential entry. You've got Lowe's looking very strong in here, so keep an eye on some of those building sector homes. Now, to wrap up the day here, guys, I do want to talk about something that is a bit concerning to me here in the market, and that is our market breadth. If we take a look at T2101, T2101 and TC2000 is the absolute market breadth, and why we've been running to the upside, setting new record high after new record high. I want you to notice that the market breadth has been continuing to fall. This is a massive divergence in the market, and it does give me a little bit of worry. Now, I'm not suggesting that this comes unraveled or anything like that all of a sudden, but this does give us that opportunity for that. We're setting new record highs. We're really stretching with enthusiasm in the market, but the participation in the market continues to be very weak. So watch that carefully in here. If we continue to see that participation weakening as we move up, I would be watching for those reversals, and we could get big, strong reversals and substantial whipsaws in environments like this. What we need to be seeing in here is if we're going to stay bullish, we need to start seeing those bulls picking up in the breadth. We need to see that energy, that momentum following through to the upside here on that bullish energy, or with that bullish energy in the market. Otherwise, we are setting ourselves up for a pretty good whipsaw or a pretty good big point move pullback here in the market. So watch that carefully. Now, if we do happen to see the bears pick up some energy in here, they're not here yet, but if they were to start showing up, watch this in here. If the bears start showing up and we start seeing bearish breadth coming in, that's going to be a reason for a little bit of worry and caution. So watch that carefully here in T20-101. Now, if we take a look at our other T20s, and I usually look at that like this, showing us that weakness in here, just wanted to show you those individual candles. We are extremely weak in here on market breadth as we continue to stretch higher. Now, if we look at our T20-122 indicator, that's up here high in the was up here high in the market on Friday. Thursday. Friday's market pulled us back here in the chart. So if the bulls can find inspiration today, we've opened that opportunity to swing back up here to the upside. But if the bears have any opportunity in here, just kind of keep in mind we've got a pretty good space for them to move in here as well. And that low breadth does give me concern here. Our T2108, little pullback in here on Friday, no particular worries in here. We did pop that resistance up here on Thursday, pulling back. We're holding good support areas here. Don't see any major problems there. It would be if we were to break down through some of this, that's where we might see a little bit of concern. And I do think the possible reversals where we pump to the upside in the pre-market and then we get the pop and drop could be something to be watching for here with breadth being so low. And on T2107, a nice stretch holding up here, very bullish. There's nothing in here that suggests bearishness other than that T2101. We're getting into some frothy zones up here in both T2108 and T2107. Remember, T2108 is a percentage of stocks above the 40-day moving average. This is the percentage of stocks above the 200-day. So we're very strong, and notice that we're reaching those very frothy areas up here. So we can continue to push for sure and for certain. But if those bears were to come into play, just watch that pretty carefully here. We could reverse relatively quick. So with that, everyone, hey, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I want to wish you great results in your trading. Thank you so much for being here today. I truly appreciate it. I want to wish you all the very, very best, and I will see you right back here bright and early Tuesday morning. Take care, be safe, and as always, wish you all kinds of success in your trading.
Black and white candles, my stars in the dark. Price is my king, got that fire and spark. Rideways my ranch on the trader's trail. Trading with heart where the profits prevail.